All right, time to kick this off. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Area 51 podcast. We've got at this point, I should call them hosts as well. We've got Steven and Brad. One thing I have to say, guys, I feel like we should at least get together once when the whole visa community world isn't burning down. Just so that every time people see the three of us together, it's like, oh shit, something's gone so bad. And they're all getting together to discuss what's happening. But welcome back.
I blame you. You require us all to wear black when we do these, and it just brings the mood down.
No, look, hey, it's navy, okay?
Sorry.
I got a navy polo. But yeah, I'm with you.
But thanks for making it. Jokes aside, the last 24, 28 hours have been a little stressful. Little is an understatement. Has been very stressful for the entire visa community here. And I'm super glad that you guys are here to break, to break down what's happening, because we're hearing so many different things from so many different sources. And it's at a point where we don't know which one to follow or what to believe. So I'm super grateful that you guys are here to kick this off and kind of walk us through what's happening right from the beginning to where we stand right now and what we should look forward to in the future. So I don't know, Steven, do you want to kick us off? Yep.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, Rahul. And, I told you earlier, shout out to my neighborhood Katie group here that's listening, but told him I'd give him a little shout out. But, awesome. Look, last 30 hours has been wild for anything H-1B and somehow a gold card. But we're going to focus on the H-1B here today. So, we get shortly after lunchtime, this Bloomberg article that starts making the tracks on, Trump is going to put in $100,000 visa fee for H-1Bs. And we didn't have any details, but I know from our firm, we were kind of like, okay, Bloomberg, we can trust that they vetted that, sourced it. We saw Reuters, Politico, all citing to Bloomberg, so it had to have been well sourced. We then, around 3:30 Central Time, 4 o'clock Central Time, we get a presser, with, as they do for many executive orders and proclamations, and they do their, kind of pontificating on everything else, how he's ended all the wars and Chicago's terrible and the Reds, are they going to make the playoffs? And, then he gets in onto the two immigration matters, and it starts, with the gold card and again, wholly separate matter. And then they start talking about the H-1B visa ban. And what was weird is at that time, Secretary Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, says it's going to be $100,000 for every individual every year. And so, we all kind of sat there and we're like, holy shit. Yeah. Like that's crazy. How are they going to do it? And we didn't have the text yet. And about 45 minutes later, we got the text and it says, okay, it's a 212F entry ban. 212F allows the president to, by proclamation, exclude certain groups. He did this before with the Muslim ban in 2017. Yep. He did it with H and L during the height of COVID, with lots of exemptions. And this is, to be honest with you, something that when Brad and I were talking after the Bloomberg article, I said, I bet you they're going to 212F this somehow, because that gives them their strongest legal ground. I think it's very tenuous. Still, I'm not going to, give them credit, but and then we get the text and everybody's like, okay, it's anybody who's not in the U.S. as of 12:01 Eastern on Sunday, September 21st. People start scrambling to get flights. They get off flights. They try to find out how to get in. And then this afternoon, we get, the White House rapid response is like, these corporate lawyers don't know anything. This is only for next year's new H-1Bs. Which, again, is not in the text of the proclamation.
Yep.
And then, we get the press secretary says, this is only for, things moving forward, not anybody with approvals. And then we finally, probably 4 o'clock Central Time, we get CBP and USCIS guidance. And I think with that, and I'll let Brad kind of talk about, the legal side of that here, but I think with those, there's a little bit of a sigh of relief. It's not completely clear. There's a lot of gray areas. There's still people impacted for sure. But I don't think anybody needs to try to hop on a plane right this second.
Yep.
Stephen, I have one question. What federal agency mans the rapid response team?
So, by the way, I got to watch my language. My kids, hey, they're apparently watching to see Dad on TV. So,
Thank God. Thank you. I need to make sure your kids watch every live stream.
No, good. I just can't be doing it.
This is the worst episode of Bluey they've ever seen.
Yeah, sorry. I guess y'all are wanting to go to bed now, listening. But so the rapid response is a White House affiliated Twitter account, X Twitter account. So what's weird, and Curtis Morrison just noted that the White House got community noted by a White House link because they were going against what is in the proclamation, which is very weird. You have the rapid response, which is a White House communication method, is saying completely different than what's in the proclamation.
I'll be honest, today was the first time I knew something like this existed. I didn't know there was a rapid response tweet system from the White House. So
God, y'all don't live on Twitter like I do.
It's
not enough.
It's the equivalent of the old, on the TV, the emergency network where they would test it. This is now that.
The rapid response. Gotcha.
So to Stephen's point, I do think the structure of the proclamation is interesting. Okay, so I just want to kind of go over it briefly to I think give good news to most folks who are terrified right now, and tell you what it actually says, and then we'll tell you their interpretation of it. Okay, now, and when I use these quotes, this is how law works, right? Either Congress passes a statute, the agency passes a regulation, or the president issues an executive order, which is somewhere in between those two things legally. And, I remember my professor at Columbia, who was the constitutional law professor at Yale, spending an entire hour-and-a-half lecture talking about where the executive order fit within the paradigm of statutes. So anyway. But
Brad,
all of those things.
Quick question before you just jump into the details, right? Can you also talk about how a proclamation differs from an executive order?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Can you also talk about how a proclamation differs from an executive order? Because if you look on the website, right, it's not categorized under an EO. And I've been trying to read up about that as well. And you're probably the best person to kind of break that down for us. Yep.
Yeah. So, so this is my opinion. Okay. I don't think there's much of a legal difference between a proclamation and an executive order. And the reason you have the terminology here derives from the authority they cite, which is INA 212F or 8 USC 1182F. I think that's right.
Sounds right.
And it says, I have a life. I swear.
212F is a lot easier.
212F. So 212F says that the president, upon proclamation, can basically stop the entry of people who are in a detrimental interest of the United States.
Okay.
And so that's why you see this called a proclamation. But I wouldn't get too hung up on the difference between those two things, because I do think both get published in the Federal Register eventually. Okay. And again, it's this, keep in mind, before Bush 1, executive orders were not a big deal. They weren't a big thing. They weren't used to publicize such a significant change in law.
Gotcha. And
then it became all of the, the cool thing in the last 25 years. But I guess I tell you that because it's a type of thing that's going to be interpreted by the people who actually have to execute it and apply it. Okay. And so we should expect it to be kind of in vague terms because that way CBP can come in and go, okay, let me read this. I'm going to provide specific guidance to those guys in the green suits who, talk to you when you get off the airplane, right? And so you expect interpretation, and anything you want interpreted, then you kind of leave room, right, for interpretation.
Yep.
But interpretation only goes so far, right? You can't interpret a yes into a no. You can't interpret a no into a yes.
Got it.
And so this is what the proclamation actually says, okay? And I'm not going to read it word for word, but it's basically a ban and exception model. So this is illegal, right? Or this has to be stopped unless you do these things. So the thing that is stopped by the proclamation is the entry into the United States of aliens as non-immigrants to perform services in a specialty occupation under the H-1B is restricted. End of case. Okay? Now, of course, when it says entry into the United States, we know that only applies to people abroad.
Yep.
You can't interpret entry into the United States
to
mean people in the U.S., right?
Fair.
So it doesn't apply to folks inside the U.S. Great. And then it gives us the first exception. You are not allowed to enter the United States on H-1B except for those aliens whose petitions are accompanied or supplemented by a payment of $100,000. So that we look at the words accompanied. So you would imagine that's like initial petition or any petition, or supplemented, meaning you sent the money in afterwards. Okay. So that's the $100,000 kicker. You are not allowed to enter the country unless you pay that money. And that's very broad. Okay.
Yep.
It does set up one exception, or it sets up a structure for exceptions. So that's kind of section 1A. Section 1C says it doesn't apply. Shall not apply to any individual alien, all aliens working for a company, or all aliens working in an industry. So you have individual, company, and industry.
Yep.
Wide exceptions if DHS, the Secretary of Homeland Security, shout out to Kristi Noem, in her discretion, says that the hiring of such aliens to be employed as H-1B specialty occupation workers is in the national interest, and, of course, does not pose a threat to the security or welfare of the United States. So what does that mean? It means the thing that is prohibited is the entry into the United States from anyone on an H-1B. In the people that are accepted are the ones that pay $100,000.
Or national interest, yeah.
Or have some sort of national interest waiver, them, their company, or their industry.
Gotcha.
Okay. And to be very clear on the scope of that restriction, they added a section called Scope and Implementation of Restriction on Entry. Very nice of them, right? And it says, the restriction on entry pursuant to Section 1 of this proclamation shall apply only, that makes it sound like it's small, to aliens who enter or attempt to enter the United States after the effective date of this proclamation, which, as we know, is in 3 hours. I don't know.
Yep. September 21st. Yep.
So any aliens who enter or attempt to enter. So that's, when I read that, that's very broad.
It is, yep.
It applies to plain language. And when I say plain language, that's an interpretive technique, which just means, what do the words say? What do they mean? I would suggest that applies to anyone with an H-1B visa.
Who leaves the country. Yep.
Period.
Well,
I'm wrong.
Actually, yeah, right.
I actually blame Steven.
That's what I thought was weird, right? Like
it's corporate stupid, or what is it? Idiot corporate attorneys Sorry, you can't see my hand. This way.
I think you're trying to say me, yeah?
No. I was pointing to the left. Actually, I'm not sure.
I mean, you're not wrong though, because I read it and I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, if I leave the country tomorrow and I come back in and I don't have 100,000 paid, I'm screwed. That's how I read it.
That is how anybody I know that knows H-1Bs interpret it, whether they are attorneys, H-1B holders, anti-H-1B groups. Everybody interpreted it the same way.
Yep.
And I think that's a really interesting point, Stephen. Look at how the anti-H-1B crowd interpreted it, because that's how they interpreted it.
Yep. They were celebrating. They were celebrating.
That's right. So we were all wrong, though. All right. Because now we have so again, Stephen mentioned this rapid response tweet that came out and said, "Oh, you idiots, you got it wrong. It only applies to new petitions that get filed after the effective date."
Okay.
My client, who I was preparing a lawsuit for because he got stuck outside of the country because he left because, very sadly, his mother passed away, and he has a wife and 2 children in the U.S., and he was planning, he had bought a ticket for Tuesday to come back, and then he saw this, and I can't imagine what
he's got to worry about this too at this point. Right? He's supposed to be grieving his mom.
Like, it's terrible, right?
From morning, he's now sitting and worrying about, hey, will I get entry into the country? It's so stupid.
I until you've had that phone call with that person, like, you don't get like, and to your point, you do get it, Raul. So
it's horrible. Yep.
So we can see this rapid response thing. He sends it to me and I go, I don't know what this is. You can't change something that's somewhere between a statute and a regulation with a tweet. And I made some sarcastic tweet about this is the tweet rule or something. I don't know.
I mean, it was, to be honest, it was still better than the newspaper article that said that some unnamed White House official said this. And then everyone's like, let's do this. I'm like, guys, hold on. Just because my unnamed uncle said that they're handing out green cards doesn't mean they're actually handing out green cards, right? So let's...
I think I texted a couple people, attorneys, that the rapid response thing, and they're like, I'm gonna need something better than some Twitter account named the Rapid Response 47. Like, that sounds like the fakest of Twitter accounts.
That sounds like a good name for like a soapbox derby car.
Is that the account handle? I didn't pay attention.
I think it is.
Oh, shit. You're right. Rapid Response 47.
Rahul, there are children watching. There are children watching.
One of them's sitting out here my window, waving at me. So I guess one of them's not.
I'm sorry.
But anyway, I said, Brad, like, they're in a White House account. And he's like, what is going on?
So then we see the agencies, you're right, issue what are very common policy guidance. What are these actually called? Memos. And this is where, again, my long discussion about interpreting statutes or regulations or executive orders, this is a normal function of an agency. They say, hey, we've read it, and this is how we interpret it.
Yep.
And it's pretty clear the same author wrote both of these. So keep in mind, Department of State has not weighed in, who clearly plays a significant role here. Because, again, this all only applies to people out of the country still, right? No one in the country. But both Citizenship and Immigration Services and Customs and Border Protection now say this proclamation applies to H-1B employment petitions filed after 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time on September 21st, 2025. Now, so it makes clear that where is it? The proclamation does not apply to aliens who are the beneficiaries of petitions that were filed prior to the effective date of the proclamation, are the beneficiaries of currently approved petitions, or are in possession of a validly issued H-1B non-immigrant visa. So that's more clarification that if you're not brand spanking new, right, then you're covered.
What if I just got picked at the lottery a few months ago? My petition's still pending, right? It's filed, but it's still. So I'm guessing it says filed before September 21st. So in that case, if it gets approved, it's fine. What if it gets an RFE and then they have to respond back to that RFE? Is it treated as a new application, or is it treated as, oh, you know what, this is from the previous lottery and you should be good to go?
No, I think your first interpretation is right. Is that
Okay.
because it was filed before
Yeah.
September 21st at 12:01 p.m. Or 12:01 a.m. Excuse me. It is counted as good. So it really should be anything after Sunday for those outside the United States.
And
Okay.
I would go one step further to say the deputy press secretary, Stephen, is that right?
Yeah.
Indicated that this only applied to new applications, new petitions, because it used the word petition.
Yep.
So, I mean, again, press secretary tweets are some pretty low on the interpretive scale. Deputy press secretary tweets are somewhere lower than that.
Hey, she responded to me on Twitter, so like I think she's pretty high bar.
Are you guys following each other now?
Not yet, you know.
Okay.
I told her we could talk about how they can like actually write a policy people can understand. They don't have to debate on Twitter, but I hadn't gotten the call.
Shots fired.
No, I like Deputy Press Secretary 47, whatever it is. I don't.
Rapid response 47.
Um,
Okay.
But I do think this is how the agencies are being told to apply this. So the client I mentioned, I told him, hop on the plane, you're fine, because CBP has instructed its agents continue to process current H-1B holders in accordance with all existing policies and procedures.
So okay. So to sum it up, every petition that has been filed for the 2025 lottery is good to go, even if it's filed outside the country.
I think so.
Okay.
Stephen,
I
do you agree
think
with that?
anything that's been filed already. I mean, one of the things that's intriguing, and Brad and I spoke about this, this afternoon, is that I think we're going to get a lot of clarity and guidance to kind of resolve everybody's questions. But if one of my clients who had someone outside the U.S. that they petitioned for,
Yep.
calls me Monday and is like, how, are we out of luck? I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
Obviously they still got to get the approval and they still have to get the visa and all that.
Yep.
But I don't think that this, they're going to have to cut $100,000 check for those. And what we have to see is moving forward. So if you go out of the country and it's 2026, what does that look like? But right now, I think most people, it's less of an emergency. There's still groups. I know, Brad, you work with some universities.
Yeah. So I would say, again, just to be very clear, I think that for people who had to get a visa in a lottery and have applied, I think you're safe.
You're safe. Okay.
Period.
Yep. Okay. Great.
Now again,
that's awesome.
Safe under the guidance, but not under the actual proclamation, right? But I think one glaring exception to the safety, right? And again, let me take one step back. It seems like what they're trying to do is stop the next batch of H-1Bs.
Yep.
Right. They have to have the lottery next April, but they don't want to issue new visas to new applicants next year that are at least outside of the country. That seems to be what really they're trying to do. But not every H-1B is cap subject, which means if where I live in Charleston, South Carolina, the Military Institute of South Carolina, the Citadel, is about 3 blocks away.
Okay.
And they have a lot of professors who are on H-1B.
Cap exempt, right?
Cap exempt. Yep. And so if they have someone who is outside of the country and they want to start in January, they could file now, right? And they, do the LCA, get it done. They'd have an approved petition this fall. And I think they are subject to the proclamation regardless of this
Yep.
interpretations.
Unless you show that they're in the national interest category.
Or you
Which
pay
I think we're
100K.
going to get guidance on.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because
okay.
that's so broadly vague. But to Brad's point, like we're kind of left with the text of the proclamation and these two policies as of, right this moment.
Gotcha. So before we spoke about the 25 lottery, right? Before we jump into the 26 lottery, I was just looking at the comments, right? We've got like a lot of questions, and the common theme that I see is are visa renewals or amendments or extensions, are they considered as new petitions? Would they be subject to this 100,000 filing fee, or are they
So
good?
we have two things. Like I think anybody who does something within the United States, a change of status from, let's say they go from H4 to H1B, or F1 to H1B, an extension, a transfer, anything like that within the United States, I do not think this applies to them because again, this is written as the authority, with the authority of an entry ban. All right,
Okay.
not a we're going to shut down the program ban.
Okay.
I think, and Brad, correct me with what your opinion is. I think what would be intriguing, and we still have a gray area, is I've got petitions to file next week for people whose visa doesn't expire until 2026.
Yep.
We're now going to file that after Sunday. If they were to travel this holiday season, are they now going to be subject to it? And I think with the interpretations we have right this minute, the answer is yes. Now, if we look at rapid response, maybe not. And maybe we'll get more guidance on what that looks like. But I think if you leave the U.S. without a valid visa, because they do say on the thing that if you've got a valid visa, you're okay. But if, let's say, in March 2026, you file for a petition, you travel June 2026 and try to re-enter, I think you could be subject to this proclamation. Brad, any?
So let me give you the counter argument, and so this is the other part of the ban section. I talked about Section A and Section C.
Right.
Section B says the Secretary of Homeland Security, shout out to Christie, shall restrict decisions on petitions not accompanied by $100,000 for H-1B who are currently outside the United States.
Point. Yep.
That means if you are in the U.S. and you're doing a renewal or a transfer or a brand new one, that doesn't apply. So they should adjudicate. Okay? They should adjudicate. And at that point, you would have an H-1B, and under this, you would be a current beneficiary when you're traveling back. And so you shouldn't have an issue. And I will tell you, my good friend Curtis Morrison just won a case on this last month in D.C., he told me. But 212F does not allow the Department of State to not issue a visa.
Okay.
It restricts entry, but not the issuance of the actual visa in your passport. So if you do your petition stateside, right, you're not currently out of the U.S., you don't fall within any of these, you leave, you're a current beneficiary, you should be okay because the State Department's got to issue it and CBP's got to let you in.
So are you considered as a current beneficiary even if you don't have a stamping on your if you have your passport stamped?
I think
stamped on your passport?
I mean, I would suggest the term beneficiary applies to the visa petition. So that's the application that's the I-129 or the I-539.
Gotcha.
Now, again, that is a counter argument, and that applies what's the word I'm looking for? Historically used canons of interpretation that follow words and their plain meanings. And that's reading left to right most of the time.
But like Twitter, man.
Twitter.
So to Stephen's point, and I think that's right, is we're going to have to get more clarification because this does still apply to people. I'm not convinced they're fully aware that it still applies to people.
Okay. So I'm just going to dumb it down for people like myself, right? Whatever you guys said. If you have a valid visa, you can travel in and out of the country and you don't need to worry about it. All right, guys, a lot of questions that you guys have asked are that you've got an approved visa, you're good, you don't have to worry about renewals. The next couple of months you want to travel, it looks like you can. But if you're applying for a fresh visa, which is a renewal or an amendment or something, anything that requires you to get a stamp, maybe hold off on that travel until you get more guidance from these guys. Is that a fair summary? So I don't know if that answers a lot of questions, because you all have a lot of questions down there. So if you need to get stamped, hold off. Otherwise, travel in and out is what I've understood, and I'm sharing
And
that
just
with you guys. Yeah.
the caveat to that, I mean, I think again, Brad, text structure history and left to right and what the words mean and the statute and
Logic,
English. Yeah, I do think he's right. I don't know if I trust the administration to follow typical interpretation, and so we will be getting guidance, right?
Now, Stephen falls in with the ICA exception here, which is the idiot corporate attorney. So be careful.
Yeah. So I agree. I think
his kids are watching. Brad, say something nice.
Well,
that's a compliment.
But no, I do think Brad's right. Like, there's a lot of weirdness to the way this has been rolled out, and this is not uncommon to the Trump administration. We can go back. A good example would be the CVIS stuff, and everybody knew what that meant until we get to court. They're like, this means nothing, and everybody's wrong, right? And so it's very clear that they tend to interpret things differently than anybody who deals with this ever.
It's that, and the fact that something else that folks have been talking about and looking at as silver lining, the fact that birthright citizenship has also not made any progress, right? So that was another question that I got quite a lot, right? There was a Supreme Court ruling that said that what is it again? Federal courts are not allowed to challenge. Was something like that, Brad? I don't remember the exact term. But there was a ruling, right, with birthright
on birthright citizenship.
Yep. You're not allowed to challenge nationwide rulings like this. So is that going to impact if you guys drop lawsuits against this ruling?
So let me tell you how it impacted by giving an example. So
right.
Let's say we assume this still applies to cap exempt professors, and that the University of California system now wants to sue because they've obviously got new professors starting all over the place all the time, right?
Right.
They, under this ruling for this past spring, they can go in and essentially it makes it much harder for them to go in and sue for everyone in that position. They can sue for themselves and say, hey, we're the University of California system. We want this enjoined as to apply to us.
Right.
Okay. But they can't get it enjoined as applied to, say, the Citadel that I mentioned earlier, just my little local school.
Yep.
Before that ruling, courts would say, well, obviously this applies to every public university that uses cap exempt in the country.
Understood. Okay.
It's the same question. It doesn't matter whether it's the Citadel or Berkeley.
Gotcha.
So we're going to enjoin it all. Now, that's a tricky example because the Supreme Court didn't end universal injunctions for everyone.
Okay.
And one of the plaintiffs, they said, could probably still do it are states.
Okay. So it's not completely off the table. Yep.
And Gorsuch in his concurrence, also mentioned what Brad, you and I sue a lot under the APA, and a 705 stay might be universal to set aside a rule or to stay the effects of a rule, and so I think when we talk about litigation, Brad and I have done injunctive relief and TROs, and I think from our end, you have to think about how that ruling impacts, but I don't necessarily think it's the end all be all. What I think the Supreme Court was tired of is, hey, this really kind of only impacts me, but I'm going to stop it nationwide
Right.
kind of cases.
Right.
But there are still state relief, APA relief. There's a lot of ways you could still, that they said nationwide relief might be appropriate still. And I think when we talk about a travel ban, it's potentially like a perfect example because we don't want someone who's flying into Logan, right? Okay, they're cool. Yeah, we got an injunction in Boston, but they fly into IAH and now they're going to get stopped. Like, I don't think that would be how we want to do immigration.
That's silly, right? Yeah, it's.
And so I could, if cases go, I could see an argument for nationwide relief. I could also see some judges saying, like, no, we're only going to do that here, right? And then let it go up to the circuit. We'll see, because we are in uncharted
Yeah, I know
kind of territory. You could also do it as a class. I mean, you could do this as a way where people could structure this.
Yep. And is that what you're planning, Brad? I know you've been talking to Curtis for about a
yeah.
lawsuit,
So
yeah.
I mean,
if it's too soon, we don't have to talk about it.
Well, no, I'll just tell you. I mean, I haven't talked to Curtis about it, so asterisk. But we were looking. So Curtis, I should say, is, like, in my opinion, the most prolific and most successful litigator when it comes to 212F right now. Okay. And he's a nice guy. And I think he's running for Congress. So
you're out in California and he's in your district.
Yeah. But I mean, we were going to try to attack the travel ban for, like, the fella I mentioned, stuck outside the country, had a visa. This is ridiculous. That emergency's gone now. The problem is still there, but that emergency is gone. I truly believe that. And so, and I also think with this guidance, the folks it impacts is a narrower class right now.
Yep.
So I am relieved, and I promise you I am relieved that I am not writing a brief right now, right? But I do think it will come unless or until they provide more guidance on, say, the cap exempt areas, right? And say, well, if it's cap exempt, one easy way to get out of it, right, would say, well, we believe these. If it's cap exempt, we do believe it's in the national interest. That would cover it all. Great.
Yeah, and just to Brad's point, real quick, not to just with Curtis, I mean, truly, he has done a ton of work for Iranian nationals who face tons of issues. I don't know of any lawyer in America who's done more work on 212F bans, than Curtis, because, look, you had some of the high profile cases, right? Trump v. Hawaii, but, like, Curtis is in the minutia on, like, the most discreet uses of it. And so, when Brad told me, Curtis was looking at it, I was like, oh, thank God Curtis is on this side of it, because it's truly, I mean, he probably knows more than 98% of government attorneys about 212F, if not like 99. And so, big shout out to him. And he's not the only one. I mean, there are other groups that are looking at litigation. I'm sure there's universities still looking at it. But gosh, I was so happy to hear
Jeff
Curtis is on our side for that.
Jeff Goldman is also, I saw his daughter Danielle's post, who runs the Build Fellowship, which essentially is a platform for cap exempt H-1Bs. So I know that she, in partnership with her dad, Jeff Goldman's also filing something for cap exempt students. So cap exempt H-1Bs. So I think that's going to be another potential lawsuit. Yeah.
It'll be interesting, but I do think, and again, I also think this is part of the design. They avoided emergency motions, and if you remember during Sevis, after they lost like 3 or 4, the policy changed drastically, and the next day there's one, we don't need emergency motions.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that that's a good move on their part. They shouldn't go litigate this at emergency posture.
I mean, I think they got a lot of phone calls at the White House this morning and
no
last
kidding.
night.
Yeah.
And I think they realized the impact that it would have, and it couldn't have been done in the way it is written without jeopardizing a lot of interest. I mean, look, I know everybody likes to say this is a tech Silicon Valley type visa, but you have rural hospitals, you have universities, you have small startups, you have engineering, like very niche area engineering type firms. I mean, it really is all over the place. And yes, tech does have a big role in H-1B. I'm not going to, fabricate information here. But I think the White House received a ton of phone calls saying, or people flying in and being like, what are we doing?
No, I'm super glad you mentioned the other parts because people often forget H-1B covers a lot other than just tech. All those niche areas of engineering, the medical profession. It's super critical frontline roles that are relying on these H-1Bs, but no one seems to talk about it. It's always the tech discussion, right? It's always a tech discussion. Yeah.
I mean, H-1Bs are for lawyers, so it's really Steve and I are just trying to work ourselves out of a job, I think.
And fashion models, right?
well, H-1B 3, is that what it's called? Or is that the training? I don't even know.
But it gets lost in whether it's the big tech hatred or animus to certain nationalities that that seem to be popping up. But this is a lot of a big deal, and so I do think the administration, maybe whoever advised on this, didn't have the full lay of the land, and we have seen conversations from people in the White House who clearly don't understand the program, with the way they're phrasing things. And so it's very possible. And if I will say, not to Trump administration, but if they are willing to hear that feedback and come up with something, right? that's better than the alternative.
That's positive. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I will say, there's a couple of lines or paragraphs I 100% agree with. I want some law enforcement authority to crack down on the bad guys. I don't want to get calls where employees are telling me their employer's forcing them to pay their own salary.
Yeah.
Because they've been benched illegally and they have to leave the country, right? I don't think any of us want that. I think we all want those guys to be caught, to be prosecuted, and the employee victims to be taken care of. And that is completely cohesive and consistent and with not wanting a father and a husband to be stuck outside of the country for the next 2 years because this thing came down out of nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, you hit it on the head. It's unfortunate that everything wrong is a concentrated few, and because of that, the rest of us have to pay the price for that, which sucks.
Yeah.
Which sucks. And I hope those the sweatshops and all those who break the rules are caught, and they don't sully the name of the H-1B program anymore. But
definitely, because the folks that break the rules, the folks that are the bad actors, the folks that abuse employees, it damages the good aspects of the program and the benefits that the program does have. And so it always, Brad and I talk about this, Rahul, you and I have talked about this. We've talked about this, the three of us on the show, all four, let's crack down on bad actors.
Yeah.
And let me do one shameless marketing plug. If you're out there working for one of these bad guys and you feel stuck because they're making you pay your application fees, they're not paying you your fee, they're threatening you, call me, email me, because there's another visa you may be eligible for and you'll have a green card in 5 years. and you can get out of that situation.
Yeah.
I'm not saying do it for the immigration benefit. I'm saying do it for yourself. And you don't have to be scared. There are ways we can do it and protect you and do it the right way, for what it's worth. Email me, call me. I don't care.
And I've said this
Shameless
as a
plug.
joke multiple times, Brad, Steve. The best way to stop this would be like White House or the USCIS hosts this mini hackathon. Call a bunch of us and say, hey, how would you crack down on this, right? And I'm telling you, we will close out all loopholes there are in the system right now.
It's funny because I didn't know until a couple months ago, after I was making field trips to DC, that my first semester roommate is like doing something with the Army at the White House now, and God knows what. He was always going to be on to good things, and he's like, oh yeah, I could give tours, and I'm like, where are you? But yeah, I'll text him and be like, let's. But I do think sometimes they don't get the best advice. They get people who just live on social media and hear nothing bad. And look, with anything involving the government, there's always going to be bad actors, right? We see it, if it's PPP fraud or Medicare, whatever, like there's always something. There's always improvements that can be made, but taking people who have a life in the United States and saying the only way you can continue is if you pay $100,000 is
insane. Yeah,
completely wrong.
That's insane.
And a tactic of the H-1B bad guys.
Pretty much, yeah. If you can't join them, beat them, huh? So it's. Let's jump into a few questions because the chat's been blowing up, right? I'm gonna ask a few questions. So, guys, just so that we don't repeat questions, what these guys have said is that if you've got an approved visa, you don't need stamping. You travel in and out. That's fine. If you've got a petition that's pending or just recently approved and you need to step out for stamping, hold off until you hear more from these guys. All right. So I'm not going to touch on these again because we've already touched upon it. I'm going to go to the next one. The next question that I see quite a lot is for the next lottery, right? The 2026 lottery. It's very speculative, I know, because you don't know anything about it, right? For students here right now who are on OPT and STEM OPT, right? They're applying for the lottery. If they get picked or approved, do their petitions need to have the $100,000 fees, or is it too soon to even speak about it?
Right? I don't think it does. Again, the plain text of the proclamation is an entry ban, and I don't think it impacts, even before they started, kind of walking back some of these things, changes of status. Brad, thoughts?
I agree with that. If you're in the U.S., you're this. It means nothing.
Okay.
But again, I'm also a practical guy. That means if you're graduating in May and you get selected in the lottery and it goes fine, I don't know when you're going to be able to travel again safely, and that's hard.
It's the worst conversation he and I have. As attorneys, as somebody, especially, in the current immigration climate, who is, and we see it at my office when Brad gets in, he's like, I'm going home for a funeral. Am I okay? Like, God dang, the last thing you got to think about is this side of it. But unfortunately,
gotcha.
Especially this proclamation, like, now we have to take that into consideration.
Gotcha. So, guys, I'm sure that's okay. It's not the best case scenario, but essentially you don't have to pay, so your job offers won't get impacted. But based on how things play out in the next couple of weeks or months, you would understand if you'll be able to travel after it's picked or not. And this also ties into a lot of folks who've been asking about, approved EB2, EB3, EB1 petitions, right? If it's approved, you've got your I-140 approved, right? Does that mean when you do renewals and stuff, you could fall under this category, or does it mean like you're safe? What immigrant petitions approved, you don't have to worry about any. You don't have to worry about the H-1B renewals and stamping and traveling in and out. So, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I will continue to advocate for if you have the green card immediately available, and you can file your adjustment of status and get the work and travel authorization, do it. And I'm not even because it lessens the likelihood of you wrapped up in these kinds of things.
Yep.
You know, we look at what's going on with the consulates, right? We have delays at consulates. Now you can't do third country stamping. You know, that's only going to get worse. If you've got that advanced parole card, you don't have to worry about any of that.
Yep.
And notably, if you were trying to come in, again, based off of the text of the proclamation, next week on an H-1B, it could be different than if you tried to enter on advanced parole, right? And so a big advocate, and you know, I think Brad is too. Like, you don't need to keep trying to balance both.
Okay, what about backlogs? Right, I have an approved I-140, and I'm waiting 50 years on a backlog, so I still have to keep renewing my visa. Does that mean I'm safe even though I have the approved I-140, or does that mean I should probably stay put and not travel until I get more guidance?
Is it so? I'm sorry. The question is someone with adjustment of status pending?
No, it's someone
just the I-140.
Just the I-140. Because I was reading the questions, and that's a theme. And there's like many people asking. I've got an approved I-140 on an EB2 or an EB3.
So you've got a 2024 priority date.
Pretty much. And that's like 20, 30 years down the lane. So
I would highly urge you not to travel.
Okay.
I just think until we get more clarity on what they all tend to agree on the meaning.
I also am not sold that we've seen the end of this. Like,
really?
It's going back and forth.
Okay.
And what's it going to look like tomorrow?
I mean, because look, and to that point, right? So we get we get what Howard Lutnick says is all the way over here, right? And then you get the proclamation, and it's, you know, here, and then you get the rapid response, and it's here, and then you get the two policy memos aren't even in line with that, right? And so it is ping-ponging around.
Okay, I'm gonna do one last scan of the questions, guys, and then we can probably see what we can do to wrap up. We've spoken about changing employers. We've spoken about the 26 lottery. We've spoken
about a whole
about
bottle of water, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, we've spoken about non-exempt, 100K, blah 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 blah. I think we're good. I think we've done our best to speak about this. I know I've been able to touch on everything, guys. Just because the problem is we don't have a lot to work with. These guys, we've just gotten one tweet and two memos, right? And a proclamation that's about as clear as mud. So it's really not a lot of material to work with. So a lot of things that have been said have been based on their experience or how they've interpreted it. So I'm sorry we couldn't get into more details, but again, you know where to reach these guys. I will link Steven's and Brad's emails in the description. Reach out to them. They're super responsive. If you're not able to get in touch with them, reach out to me. I'll try to get you in touch with them as well. So,
and if I could just, give a shout out, Rahul, to you. I mean, you're running a WhatsApp group here for the Area 51 community. I went to bed, tried to go to bed early last night. I had to be up early to coach, and I hundreds of messages, and you were in there. Lorenz was going,
Yep.
Truly,
Brad's in there.
If you're not a part of this, I recommend, to join, Rahul, you being a really good voice of reason for the community who's otherwise panicked, and trying your best to source information, validate information. Really impressive for someone who you don't need to, you've taken that, that step here. I always appreciate your work, man.
Oh, thank you, Steven. Thanks, Brad. You guys have been super available. I appreciate all your support on X, on the community, on everything else, and yeah, it's good to have folks like you on our side standing up for us. And I'm gonna emphasize on a point I made on X. You're going to see a lot of people putting content out there, people like myself who are not immigration attorneys. We're all speculating quite a lot, right? Based on what we know, what we've heard, our opinions. Just don't go by that and make major decisions, right? Always make sure you talk to an immigration attorney, talk to a Steve, and talk to a Brad. Listen to them, see what they tell you, and then make your decisions. So don't go by what you see on Instagram or Twitter. a lot of people have opinions, and more often than not, that could get you into trouble. So I'm just gonna end with that caveat over there. And I don't know, Brad. I saw you were going to say something on that when I said that.
No. I was just saying. I went through my head like nothing I've said today is legal advice, right? And
Yeah.
and my delusional self, I got a bunch of I did like 3 or 4 tweets. I didn't go wild, and the bot army attacked me from the other side, and other than the ones that are just vitriol, that are whatever program, just like call them a jerk, call them a traitor, whatever it is.
Yep.
I just keep seeing these huge overlaps in the concerns of both sides. And I just wish there was a way for the sides to focus on those things they share and not the things they don't.
Absolutely.
And I would urge everyone to look at where we share interests, like going after the bad guys, right? And focus on that rather than the things we don't. So anyway. That's my rainbows and butterflies kisses.
As I hope to have you guys back soon, and I'll start, if folks reach out with questions, I'll start punting them your way. And I know, Brad, once you have more of the lawsuit stuff, please reach out. There are a bunch of Capington folks in the community and folks who have been talking with. If anyone's impacted and they need to connect with you, and I'll make sure I do that. But apart from that, stay safe, guys. I know it's been a tough Friday and almost I guess half of 3/4 of Saturday. So don't some things are out of your control. Just stay put. Don't let this get to you, and just keep an eye out for updates so that you can plan out your upcoming travel and whatnot. So until then, I'll see you guys soon. Take care and see you in the next episode. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.